The rain came down in sheets so thick Brielle Thompson could barely see 3 feet ahead. Each step felt like walking through cement, her swollen ankles screaming in protest. The weight of her 8-month pregnant belly pulled her forward as another wave of pain seized her abdomen. She stumbled, catching herself against the cold iron gate, her fingers trembling as they gripped the metal bars. This was it. The end of the line. Behind her lay a trail of rejection. 7 shelters, all full. 13 phone calls to friends who suddenly didn't answer. 2 days of sleeping in her car before it was towed for unpaid parking tickets. And now, clutching the scrap of paper with this address, standing outside the biggest house she'd ever seen, Brielle felt her last thread of dignity slipping away. The mansion beyond the gate glowed with warm light from every window. Perfectly trimmed hedges lined the driveway. Luxury cars sat beneath a covered area. This was the home of Julian Morales, tech billionaire, and she was about to beg a complete stranger for help. Another contraction hit, sharper this time. Brielle gasped, doubling over. Her bright blue maternity dress, the only nice thing she still owned, was soaked through. Water ran down her face, mixing with tears she'd been holding back for hours. She pressed the intercom button with shaking fingers. Nothing. She pressed it again, longer this time, leaning against the gate for support. Her vision blurred. The baby kicked hard as if protesting their situation. Brielle's legs began to buckle. "Please," she whispered to the intercom, her voice breaking. "Please, I need help. My baby, something's wrong." The world tilted. Brielle felt herself sliding down the gate, her body giving up the fight. The concrete rushed up to meet her as darkness crept in from the edges of her vision. Her last thought before everything went black was a prayer that someone, anyone, would find her before it was too late. The gate buzzed and swung open, but Brielle didn't hear it. She didn't see the tall man in a burgundy robe sprinting down the driveway, phone already to his ear calling for an ambulance. She didn't feel the gentle hands that lifted her or the warmth of being carried inside. All she knew was cold, pain, and the desperate fear that she'd failed her baby before she even had the chance to hold her. Before we continue with Brielle's story, can I ask you something important? Have you ever felt completely alone, like the whole world turned its back on you? Have you ever been one moment away from giving up? If this story touches something in your heart, would you take just 2 seconds to subscribe and leave a comment about a time when kindness changed your life? Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Now, let's find out what happens when Brielle opens her eyes. The first thing Brielle noticed was softness. Not the hard concrete she remembered, but something like clouds cradling her body. The second thing was warmth, a gentle heat that seemed to wrap around her like a blanket. The third was the steady beeping of a monitor somewhere close by. Her eyes fluttered open to unfamiliar surroundings. She lay in an enormous bed with cream-colored sheets, surrounded by medical equipment. Soft morning light filtered through floor-to-ceiling windows, revealing a room larger than her entire former apartment. And 4 drip connected to her arm, and various monitors tracked her vital signs. "The baby," Brielle gasped, her hands immediately going to her stomach. The familiar bump was still there, and as if responding to her touch, the baby gave a strong kick. Relief flooded through her so intensely she started to cry. "Your baby is fine," a calm voice said from the doorway. "The doctor checked both of you thoroughly. You're both going to be okay." Brielle turned to see a man standing there, holding a tray with tea and toast. He was tall, with dark hair and warm brown eyes that held genuine concern. He wore dark jeans and a forest green sweater that somehow made him look both casual and expensive. This had to be Julian Morales. "Where am I?" Brielle asked, though she already suspected the answer. "My home," Julian said, moving into the room carefully, as if afraid he might startle her. "You collapsed at my gate last night. The ambulance came, but the EMT said it was safer to monitor you here than risk moving you in your condition. I had my personal physician come, along with an obstetrician. They've been checking on you every hour." Brielle looked down at her hands, shame burning through her chest. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have. I didn't mean to." "Please don't apologize," Julian interrupted gently. He set the tray on a side table and pulled up a chair, sitting at a respectful distance from the bed. "You needed help and you asked for it. That takes courage, not shame." "You don't understand," Brielle said, tears streaming down her face. "I have nothing. No money, no home, no family. I can't pay you back for any of this. I shouldn't have come here." Julian leaned forward, his expression serious but kind. "I'm going to tell you something my father told me when I was young. He said that wealth isn't measured by what you accumulate, but by what you do when someone needs you. Last night you needed help. Today I can provide it. It's that simple. Nothing is that simple, Brielle whispered. Maybe it should be, Julian replied. He stood and walked to the windows looking out over the grounds. I built my company on the idea that technology should solve problems and help people. But lately I've been so focused on apps and algorithms that I forgot about real people with real needs. You reminded me last night why any of this matters. Brielle wiped her eyes, studying this man who seemed too good to be true. In her experience, nobody helped without wanting something in return. What do you want from me? Julian turned back to her, and she saw something like pain flash across his face. I want you to let me help you. No strings, no expectations. Just, let me do this one good thing. He paused, then added, the doctor said you need bed rest for at least a week. Your blood pressure was dangerously high, and you're dehydrated and malnourished. After that, we can figure out next steps together if you're willing. I can't stay here for a week, Brielle protested. It's too much. Where else would you go? Julian asked simply. The question hung in the air between them. Brielle had no answer because there was no answer. She had nowhere else to go, no one else to turn to. The shelters were full. Her friends had abandoned her. Her family had disowned her when she refused to give the baby up for adoption. She was completely, utterly alone. Except she wasn't, not right now. Okay, she said quietly, the word barely audible. Thank you. I'll stay until the doctor says I can leave. Julian's face broke into a smile, and Brielle noticed how it completely transformed him. Good. Now please eat something. The kitchen prepared breakfast, but if you don't like tea and toast, they can make whatever you want. This is perfect, Brielle said, reaching for the tea. Her hand still shook slightly. I haven't eaten in 2 days. She saw Julian's jaw tighten at that admission, but he didn't comment. Instead he said, there are clothes in the closet, all new and what I hope are the right sizes. The bathroom is through that door. This room is yours for as long as you need it. If you need anything at all, there's a phone by the bed. Press 0 for the kitchen, 1 for medical, 2 for housekeeping, and 3 reaches my assistant, Sophia. She's wonderful and will help you with anything you need. You've thought of everything, Brielle said, overwhelmed. I tried, Julian said. Oh, and Dr. Hayes, the obstetrician, will be back this afternoon to check on you. She specializes in high-risk pregnancies and wanted to do another ultrasound, just to be safe. Fresh tears spilled down Brielle's cheeks. I can't afford. You're not paying for anything, Julian said firmly. Please, Brielle, it is Brielle, right? I found your ID in your purse. She nodded. Brielle, I know it's hard to accept help. I know you probably feel embarrassed or like you're imposing. But I promise you this isn't charity. This is one human being helping another human being. That's all. Brielle took a sip of her tea, letting the warmth spread through her chest. When was the last time someone had shown her such kindness? When was the last time anyone had cared whether she ate or had clothes or got medical care? Thank you, she said again, meaning it with every fiber of her being. You saved my life last night. You saved my baby's life. Julian shook his head. You saved yourself by having the courage to ask for help. I just opened a door. But it was more than that, Brielle thought as she watched him leave the room, giving her privacy to eat and rest. He hadn't just opened a door. He'd opened his entire home, his resources, his heart. And for reasons she couldn't fully understand, he'd done it without hesitation, without judgment, without expecting anything in return. As she ate the simple breakfast, feeling strength slowly return to her body, Brielle made a silent promise to her unborn daughter. Whatever happened next, however this strange situation unfolded, she would never forget this moment. She would never forget that when she had nowhere else to turn, a stranger became her salvation. And maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something better. Something hopeful. The baby kicked again, and Brielle placed her hand over the spot, feeling the little life inside her that had kept her fighting through everything. We're going to be okay, she whispered. I don't know how yet, but we're going to be okay. For the first time in months, she actually believed it. 3 days passed in a blur of rest, medical checks, and quiet conversations. Brielle spent most of her time in the beautiful bedroom, following doctor's orders to stay off her feet. The high blood pressure was coming down, but Dr. Hayes wanted to monitor her closely. Each morning, Julian brought her breakfast himself, usually around 8 o'clock. He'd knock softly, wait for her invitation, then come in with a tray of food prepared by his chef. They'd talk while she ate, casual conversations about nothing important. The weather. The books on her nightstand that his housekeeper had brought from the library. The view from her window. It was on the 4th morning that things shifted. Julian arrived with the usual tray, but this time he seemed nervous. He set down the food, poured her tea, then pulled up the chair he'd claimed as his spot. For a long moment he just sat there, hands clasped together, clearly gathering his thoughts. "You don't have to tell me," he finally said. "But I'd like to know your story if you're willing to share it." Brielle had been expecting this question. She'd rehearsed various versions in her head, trying to decide how much to reveal. But looking at Julian's open, honest face, she found herself wanting to tell him everything. "I met Tyler when I was 24, she began, wrapping her hands around her teacup. "I was working as a graphic designer for a small firm in the city. He was charming, funny, successful. Everything seemed perfect." "Seemed?" Julian repeated softly. "Yeah," Brielle said. "Seemed. We dated for 6 months before I got pregnant. I thought he'd be happy. We talked about marriage, about a future together. But the moment I told him, everything changed." She took a sip of tea, steadying herself. "He said I did it on purpose to trap him. Said he wasn't ready to be a father. Gave me money for an abortion and told me if I didn't get one, we were done." Julian's expression darkened, but he stayed quiet, letting her continue. "I couldn't do it," Brielle said. "I just couldn't. So Tyler left. Blocked my number, moved to a different city, completely disappeared from my life. When I was 4 months along, my company downsized and I lost my job. I tried to find new work, but nobody wants to hire someone who's obviously pregnant." "That's illegal," Julian said. "Sure, but good luck proving it," Brielle replied. "They always had some other reason. Not enough experience. Not the right fit. Position was filled. I went through my savings, then my emergency fund. I called my parents, but they'd never approved of Tyler, and when I told them what happened, they said I made my choice and needed to live with the consequences." "They cut you off?" Julian asked, disbelief in his voice. Brielle nodded. "I have a younger sister, Rebecca. She wanted to help, but my parents forbade it. Said if she sent me money, they'd disown her too. I couldn't let that happen. So I was on my own." "What about friends?" "Most of them were Tyler's friends too. They took his side. The few who didn't." Brielle shrugged. "They had their own lives, their own problems. I couldn't keep asking them for help. Eventually they stopped answering my calls." Julian leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his hair. "So you lost everything. Your boyfriend, your job, your family, your friends. All while pregnant and alone." "I managed for a while," Brielle said. "Sold my car, found a tiny apartment, did freelance design work online. But clients don't pay on time, and landlords don't care why you're late with rent. I got evicted 2 months ago. Stayed in a motel until the money ran out. Then my car. And then the shelters," Julian finished. "And then your gate," Brielle said. "I'd read about you online. About your charity work, your foundation. I thought, maybe if I could just talk to you, explain my situation, you might know. Someone who could help. A women's shelter with space, a program for pregnant mothers, anything. I never meant to collapse on your doorstep like some dramatic movie scene." Julian surprised her by laughing, a genuine warm sound. "Life doesn't follow scripts. Sometimes the most dramatic moments are the most real." Brielle found herself smiling despite the heavy conversation. "Your turn. You know my story. What's yours?" Julian stood and walked to the window, his back to her. "My father came to this country with nothing," he said. "He worked 3 jobs to support my mother and me. I grew up watching him sacrifice everything so I could have opportunities he never had. He died when I was 16, a heart attack at 42 from working himself to death." "I'm sorry," Brielle said softly. "I promised him before he died that I'd make something of myself," Julian continued. "That I'd use the education he gave me to build something meaningful. So I did. I started my first company at 22, sold it at 25, used that money to build what I have now. But somewhere along the way I forgot why I was doing it." He turned back to face her. "I've been so focused on growth, on success, on beating competitors and launching new products, that I stopped seeing people. My father helped everyone who needed it even when we barely had enough ourselves. He'd give a stranger his last dollar if they needed it more. I lost that. Until you knocked on my gate and reminded me." Brielle felt something shift in her chest, a warmth that had nothing to do with the tea. "You're giving yourself too little credit. Most people would have called 911 and closed the gate." "Maybe," Julian said. "But that's not enough anymore. I don't want to be the person who does the minimum. I want to be like my father, like the man who taught me that wealth means nothing if you don't share it." "Your father sounds like he was wonderful," Brielle said. "He was," Julian agreed, returning to his chair. My mother still lives in the same small house he bought for her 30 years ago. She refuses to move, says it has his spirit in every room. Maybe you'll meet her someday. She'd like you. The casual mention of someday, of future meetings, sent a flutter through Brielle's stomach. She tried to ignore it, reminding herself that this was temporary. Julian was being kind, that was all. When the baby came, she'd figure out her next steps. She couldn't stay here forever. So what happens now? She asked. After the week is up and the doctor clears me? Julian met her eyes directly. That's up to you. But I'd like to make a suggestion if you'll hear it. Okay, Brielle said cautiously. Stay until the baby is born, Julian said. Let me cover your medical expenses and make sure you have everything you need. After the birth, we can reassess. Maybe by then you'll have found work or connected with programs that can help. But right now, trying to survive on the streets while 8 months pregnant isn't a solution. It's a crisis waiting to happen. Every logical part of Brielle's brain screamed that she shouldn't accept. That she was already too indebted to this man, that she was taking advantage of his kindness, that she needed to stand on her own 2 feet. But the part of her that was a mother, that had to think about her baby's safety above all else, knew he was right. Okay, she said. But I want to help somehow. I can't just sit here doing nothing. Let me work, even if it's small projects. I'm a good designer. I can earn my keep. Deal, Julian said immediately, his face lighting up. Actually, my marketing team has been struggling with our new app interface. Maybe you could take a look, give some feedback? I'd love to, Brielle said, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. This wasn't charity if she was contributing something. They talked for another hour, Brielle explaining her design philosophy and Julian describing his company's challenges. She found herself genuinely interested in his work, impressed by how he balanced profit with purpose. His apps focused on connecting people, solving real problems, making technology accessible to everyone. When Julian finally left, citing meetings he couldn't miss, Brielle lay back against the pillows and thought about how strange life could be. A week ago, she'd been sleeping in her car, wondering where her next meal would come from. Today she was comfortable, safe, with medical care and a roof over her head, having breakfast conversations with a billionaire who seemed to genuinely care what happened to her. The baby kicked and Brielle smiled. What do you think, little one? Are we going to be okay here? Another kick, stronger this time. I'll take that as a yes, Brielle whispered, closing her eyes and letting herself, for the first time in months, simply rest without fear. 2 weeks passed and Brielle settled into a routine that felt almost normal. Her blood pressure stabilized, the doctor was pleased with her progress, and she'd started working on design projects for Julian's company. Every morning still brought breakfast with Julian, conversations that grew longer and more personal with each passing day. She learned that he loved old movies and terrible puns. That he'd taught himself to code at age 12. That he missed his father every single day but carried his lessons forward. That despite his wealth and success, he felt lonely sometimes, surrounded by people who wanted things from him rather than wanting to know him. Brielle shared her own stories in return. Her love of art and how design let her create beauty even when life felt ugly. Her dreams of having a studio someday, working with small businesses to build their brands. Her fear that she'd mess up as a mother, that her baby deserved better than someone who couldn't even keep a roof over their heads. You're already a good mother, Julian told her one morning after she'd voiced this fear. A good mother is someone who puts their child first, who fights for them, who doesn't give up even when everything is falling apart. That's you, Brielle. You walked through a storm while in labor because you thought I might be able to help. That's not weakness. That's strength. They were sitting in the sunroom, a bright space filled with plants and comfortable furniture. Brielle had graduated from bed rest to gentle movement around the house. She wore a maroon maternity dress that Julian's assistant Sophia had picked out, along with dozens of other items that made Brielle feel guilty and grateful in equal measure. I still feel like I'm taking advantage of you, Brielle admitted. And I still think you're being too hard on yourself, Julian countered. He set down his coffee cup, his expression turning serious. Can I tell you something I haven't told anyone else? Of course, Brielle said, curious. 2 years ago I was engaged, Julian said, the words coming slowly. Her name was Isabella. We'd been together for 3 years and I thought she was the one. I proposed, she said yes, we started planning this huge wedding. What happened? Brielle asked gently. I found out she was only with me for the money, Julian said flatly. She was seeing someone else, someone she actually loved. But he was a teacher, didn't make much money. So she was going to marry me, get half my wealth in the eventual divorce she was already planning, then run off with him. I only found out because her sister felt guilty and told me. That's horrible, Brielle said, meaning it. Julian nodded. It messed me up for a while. Made me suspicious of everyone, cynical about relationships. I stopped dating, stopped letting people get close. Threw myself into work because at least there people's motives were clear. They wanted money or success or connections, and I knew exactly where I stood. But that's lonely, Brielle said. Very, Julian agreed. And then you showed up, needing everything and offering nothing but honesty. You didn't even know who I was when you knocked on my gate. You were just desperate and hoping a stranger might help. That kind of genuine need, that vulnerability, it reminded me that not everyone has hidden agendas. Brielle felt her cheeks warm. I feel like I should say something profound right now, but I've got nothing. Pregnancy brain is real. Julian laughed, the sound filling the sunroom. See, that's what I mean. You're just real. You say what you think. You don't try to impress me or manipulate me. You're just Brielle, doing your best in an impossible situation. Well, just Brielle is very grateful for everything you've done, she said. I mean it, Julian. I don't know how I'll ever repay you. You already have, Julian said softly. You've given me a reason to remember why any of this matters. Their eyes met, and Brielle felt something electric pass between them. She looked away quickly, reminding herself not to read into moments like these. Julian was kind, that was all. He was helping her out of compassion, not attraction. The last thing she needed was to develop feelings for a man who was way out of her league and who'd already been burned by someone using him. The baby's moving, she said, changing the subject. Want to feel? She'd meant it as a friendly offer, a way to break the tension. But when Julian crossed the room and knelt beside her chair, placing his hand gently on her belly, something shifted. The baby kicked right against his palm and his face lit up with wonder. That's incredible, he breathed. She's strong. Brielle asked. I thought you didn't know if it was a boy or girl. I don't know, Julian admitted. But I have a feeling. A daughter feeling. The baby kicked again as if confirming his guess. They both laughed, and Julian kept his hand there, feeling the life moving beneath Brielle's skin. She watched his face, seeing genuine joy and amazement, and felt her heart do something dangerous. This was how people fell in love in movies, she thought. Quiet moments, shared wonder, hands on pregnant bellies. But this wasn't a movie. This was real life, and real life was messy and complicated. She was homeless and pregnant with another man's baby. Julian was a billionaire who'd been betrayed and probably saw her as a charity project. Anything else was just fantasy. I should probably rest, Brielle said, gently moving his hand away. The doctor said not to overdo it. If Julian noticed her withdrawal, he didn't show it. He stood smoothly, offered her his arm to help her up. Of course. Do you need anything? Water, snacks, more pillows? I'm good, Brielle said. Thank you though. She made her way back to her room, trying to ignore the way her skin still tingled where his hand had been. This was gratitude, she told herself firmly. Hormones and gratitude, nothing more. But that night, lying in bed and staring at the ceiling, Brielle couldn't stop thinking about the way Julian had looked at her. The way he listened when she talked. The way he seemed to genuinely care about her opinions and thoughts. Stop it, she scolded herself. You're setting yourself up for heartbreak. The baby kicked, and Brielle placed her hand where Julian's had been earlier. We need to be smart about this, she whispered to her daughter. We need to be grateful and gracious and remember that none of this is permanent. We'll get back on our feet, find our own place, build our own life. This is just a moment in time, not our reality. But even as she said the words, Brielle wondered if she believed them. And more dangerously, she wondered if she wanted them to be true. The days turned into weeks, and Brielle found herself settling into life at the mansion in ways that both comforted and concerned her. She worked on design projects every morning, attended doctor appointments in the afternoon, and spent evenings talking with Julian about everything and nothing. They fell into easy companionship. Julian taught her to play chess, though she rarely won. She introduced him to her favorite old sitcoms, and they'd watch episodes together while eating popcorn the chef prepared. He showed her his mother's recipes and they'd cook together in the enormous kitchen, Brielle supervising from a stool while Julian did the actual work. Your mother really made you learn all these recipes? Brielle asked one evening as Julian carefully stirred a pot of pozole. She insisted, Julian said. Said a man who can't feed himself is only half a man. Plus, she knew I'd be working crazy hours building the company. She wanted to make sure I'd eat real food instead of takeout every night. Smart woman, Brielle said. She was wearing a bright red maternity top that Sophia had bought, paired with comfortable leggings. Her belly had grown substantially in the past few weeks, and the baby seemed to be constantly moving now. She'd like you, Julian said, tasting the broth and adding more spices. You remind me of her, actually. Strong, practical, doesn't take any nonsense. I'd love to meet her, Brielle said, then caught herself. I mean, if that's appropriate. I know this situation is weird. Julian turned from the stove, his expression serious. It's not weird to me. You're my friend, Brielle. I'd like you to meet my mother. Friend. The word should have made Brielle happy, but instead it stung a little. Which was ridiculous because friendship was exactly what this should be. What it needed to be. Then I'd be honored to meet her, Brielle said, smiling despite the odd ache in her chest. Julian grinned. Good, because I already invited her for dinner tomorrow. I hope that's okay. You're incorrigible, Brielle laughed. I prefer charmingly spontaneous, Julian corrected. They ate dinner together that night as they had most nights. The conversation flowed easily, touching on politics and philosophy and whether pineapple belonged on pizza. Julian argued passionately that it did, while Brielle insisted it was a crime against Italian cuisine. You're being dramatic, Julian teased. I'm being correct, Brielle countered. Some things are sacred and pizza is one of them. What about tacos? Julian asked. Are those sacred? Obviously, Brielle said. Which is why I'd never put something weird like, I don't know, cranberries on them. Cranberries on tacos actually sounds interesting, Julian mused. You're just trying to provoke me now, Brielle said, throwing a napkin at him. He caught it easily, laughing. These moments of playfulness had become common between them, a easiness that Brielle treasured even as it terrified her. She was getting too comfortable here. Too attached. After dinner, they moved to the library, a room Brielle had fallen in love with the first time she saw it. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves held thousands of volumes, and comfortable chairs were positioned near windows that overlooked the garden. I have something for you, Julian said, pulling a folder from his desk. The marketing team loved your redesign of the app interface. They want to hire you as a consultant when the baby comes. Brielle took the folder, her hands shaking slightly. Inside was a contract offering her a generous salary for design work she could do from home, flexible hours, full benefits. Julian, this is... She started but couldn't finish. Tears blurred her vision. It's what you deserve, Julian said firmly. You're talented, Brielle. The work you've done these past weeks has been better than what we were getting from our regular designers. This isn't charity. It's smart business. Thank you, Brielle whispered, clutching the folder to her chest. You keep saving me. You keep saving yourself, Julian corrected. I'm just opening doors. You're the one walking through them. The baby kicked hard, making Brielle gasp. Julian was immediately at her side, concerned. Are you okay? Should I call the doctor? No, Brielle laughed. She's just excited. Or maybe she agrees with you about the pineapple pizza thing. Julian relaxed, smiling. She has good taste then. She's going to be so spoiled, Brielle said softly, looking down at her belly. Growing up knowing you, seeing all this. How do I explain to her later that this isn't normal? That most people don't live in mansions with chefs and libraries and people who solve all their problems. You tell her the truth, Julian said seriously. That she was born into difficult circumstances, but kindness and hard work changed everything. That her mother never gave up, even when things were impossible. That people can be good and generous, and that she should be the same way when she's able to help others. Brielle felt tears slip down her cheeks. When did you get so wise? I had a good teacher, Julian said. My father used to say that money is just a tool. It's what you build with it that matters. I think he'd be happy to know I'm using it to help you build a better life for your daughter. I think he'd be proud of you, Brielle said. I know I am. The words hung between them, heavier than she'd intended. Julian's expression shifted, something intense and warm entering his eyes. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and brushed a tear from her cheek. Thank you, he said quietly. That means more than you know. Brielle's breath caught. They were closer than they'd been since that day he felt the baby kick. She could see flecks of gold in his brown eyes, could feel the warmth radiating from his body. It would be so easy to lean in, to close the small distance between them, to find out if his lips were as soft as they looked. The baby kicked again, hard enough to be visible through her shirt. The moment broke and they both laughed, stepping apart. She's got timing, Julian said. She's going to be trouble, Brielle agreed, grateful for the interruption even as part of her mourned what might have happened. They said goodnight soon after, Julian walking Brielle to her room like he always did. At her door, he hesitated, then pulled her into a gentle hug. It was the first time he'd held her since that night at the gate, and Brielle let herself sink into it for just a moment, breathing in his scent and feeling safe in a way she'd never felt before. "Sleep well," Julian whispered against her hair. "You too," Brielle managed. She closed the door behind her and leaned against it, heart pounding. This was getting dangerous. She was falling for him, had probably been falling for him since those first breakfast conversations. And that was the worst possible thing that could happen. Because when this ended, when she moved out with her baby and started her new job and built her independent life, losing Julian's friendship would hurt. But losing something more? That would destroy her. She had to be more careful. Had to maintain boundaries. Had to remember that gratitude wasn't love, and kindness wasn't romance. And just because Julian was wonderful didn't mean he felt anything more than friendly compassion for her. But as she lay in bed that night, hand on her belly and mind on the man down the hall, Brielle couldn't quite convince herself to stop hoping. Brielle woke at 3 in the morning to wetness and cramping. For a moment she thought she'd just had an accident, embarrassing but manageable. Then another cramp hit, stronger this time, and she realized what was happening. Her water had broken. "Okay," she said out loud to herself, trying not to panic. "Okay, this is fine. This is normal. You've got this." Another contraction proved her wrong. She definitely didn't have this. She reached for the phone by her bed, her hands shaking as she pressed 3 for Julian's number. He'd insisted she call him if anything happened, any time of day or night. He answered on the first ring, voice alert despite the hour. "Brielle? What's wrong?" "The baby's coming," she said, then gasped as another contraction hit. "My water broke." "I'm on my way," Julian said. She heard movement, doors opening. "I'm calling Dr. Hayes and getting the car ready. Just breathe, okay? I'll be there in 30 seconds. He was there in 20, bursting into her room still in pajama pants and a t-shirt, phone to his ear. "Yes, contractions started about 5 minutes ago. Water broke? Okay, we'll meet you at the hospital." He hung up and turned to Brielle with a calm smile that she suspected was for her benefit. "Dr. Hayes is meeting us at the hospital. She says first babies usually take a while, so we have time. Can you walk?" "I think so," Brielle said. Julian helped her stand, supporting her weight as another contraction made her double over. "Oh God, this hurts." "I know," Julian said soothingly. "But you're doing great. We're going to get you to the hospital, they'll give you an epidural, and soon you'll be holding your baby girl." He'd grabbed a bag packed weeks ago on Dr. Hayes' instructions, and he guided Brielle carefully through the mansion. The driver had the car running by the time they got outside, and Julian settled Brielle into the back seat before climbing in beside her. "You don't have to come," Brielle said between contractions. "You can just have the driver take me." Julian looked at her like she'd suggested he jump off a bridge. "I'm not leaving you. Unless you want me to?" "No," Brielle admitted. "I'm scared." "That's normal," Julian said, taking her hand. "But you're not alone. I'm right here." The drive to the hospital passed in a blur of pain and breathing exercises. Julian talked her through each contraction, counting breaths, reminding her to relax. By the time they arrived, Brielle was gripping his hand so hard she was afraid she'd break his fingers. Dr. Hayes met them at the entrance with a wheelchair and a reassuring smile. "Right on time. Let's go have a baby." The next hours were the longest of Brielle's life. The epidural helped with the pain but not the fear, not the overwhelming awareness that everything was about to change. She was about to become a mother, about to be responsible for another human life, and she had no idea if she was ready. Julian stayed through all of it. He held her hand through the contractions, wiped sweat from her forehead, told her terrible jokes to distract her during the hardest moments. He never complained, never left, never made her feel like she was a burden. "You're doing amazing," he kept saying. "So strong, so brave." "I'm not brave," Brielle gasped during one particularly bad contraction. "I'm terrified." "Bravery isn't not being scared," Julian said. "It's being scared and doing it anyway. And that's what you're doing." When the doctor finally said it was time to push, Brielle was exhausted and certain she couldn't do it. But Julian moved to support her back, letting her lean against him, and whispered encouragement that somehow gave her strength. "One more push," Dr. Hayes said. "Come on, Brielle. You can do this." Brielle pushed with everything she had left, and suddenly the room filled with the sound of crying. A loud, indignant wail that was the most beautiful sound Brielle had ever heard. "It's a girl," Dr. Hayes announced, holding up a tiny, perfect baby covered in goo and absolutely furious about being born. "A daughter," Julian breathed from behind Brielle. "You have a daughter." They cleaned the baby and placed her on Brielle's chest, and the moment Brielle looked into those scrunched-up eyes, everything else in the world fell away. This was her baby. Her daughter. The tiny person she'd carried and protected and worried about for 9 months. "Hi," Brielle whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Hi, little one. I'm your mama." The baby stopped crying, seeming to recognize her voice. Tiny fingers wrapped around Brielle's thumb with surprising strength. "She's perfect," Julian said, his voice thick with emotion. Brielle looked up to see tears on his cheeks too. "Absolutely perfect." "Do we have a name?" Dr. Hayes asked gently. Brielle looked at her daughter, thought about everything that had led to this moment. The desperation and fear, the kindness and hope. She thought about Julian opening his door, opening his home, opening his heart. She thought about second chances and new beginnings. "Hope," Brielle said. "Her name is Hope." "Hope," Julian repeated, reaching out to gently touch the baby's tiny hand. "It's perfect." They moved Brielle to a private room that Julian had arranged, large and comfortable with a couch where he could sleep. The nurses showed her how to feed Hope, how to change diapers, how to swaddle. Through it all, Julian stayed, asking questions and taking notes like he was studying for an exam. "You don't have to learn all this," Brielle said as he practiced swaddling a doll the nurse had brought. "I want to help," Julian said simply. "If you'll let me." Brielle looked at him, this man who had given her everything and asked for nothing, who had stayed by her side through labor, who was looking at her daughter with such tenderness it made her chest ache. "Thank you," she said, meaning it for so much more than just today. "For everything." Julian met her eyes and something passed between them, something deeper than friendship or gratitude. "Anything for you too," he said softly. "Anything at all." Hope fussed in Brielle's arms, and Julian was immediately there, helping adjust her position, making sure she was comfortable. They worked together naturally like they'd been doing this for years instead of hours. As Brielle watched Julian coo at her daughter, making silly faces that made Hope's eyes track his movements, she felt something settle in her heart. Something warm and terrifying and completely unavoidable. She was in love with him. She'd probably been in love with him for weeks, maybe since those first breakfast conversations, maybe since the moment he'd carried her inside during the storm. But holding her baby, watching him be so gentle and caring, she couldn't deny it anymore. She was completely, hopelessly in love with Julian Morales. And she had absolutely no idea what to do about it. Coming home from the hospital felt surreal. Julian's staff had transformed the guest house on the property into a perfect space for Brielle and Hope. It had a bedroom, a nursery, a small living area, and a kitchenette. Everything was bright and cheerful, decorated in soft yellows and greens. "This is too much," Brielle said as Sophia gave her a tour while Julian carried Hope's car seat. "It's just right," Julian countered. "You need your own space, especially now with a newborn. But you're still close enough that if you need anything, I'm right there." The nursery made Brielle cry. It was beautiful, with hand-painted murals of stars and moons, a rocking chair by the window, shelves full of books and toys. Everything a baby could possibly need. "Julian," she said, turning to him with tears in her eyes, "I can't accept all this." "Too late," Julian said cheerfully. "It's already done. Besides, Hope deserves a beautiful room, doesn't she?" As if on cue, Hope started fussing. Brielle lifted her from the car seat, settling into the rocking chair to feed her. Julian excused himself to give them privacy, but not before placing a hand gently on Brielle's shoulder. "I'm glad you're both home," he said quietly. "Home." The word resonated in Brielle's chest. When had this place become home? When had Julian become someone she couldn't imagine being away from? The first weeks with Hope were exhausting and wonderful in equal measure. Brielle barely slept, learning to respond to every cry, every need. Julian checked in every day, bringing meals, offering to hold Hope so Brielle could shower or nap, sitting with them during late-night feeding sessions when Brielle felt overwhelmed. "You don't have to do this," Brielle told him one night around 2 a.m. They were in her living room, Hope sleeping on Julian's chest while Brielle tried to stay awake long enough to make sure she'd stay down. "I know I don't have to," Julian said, gently patting Hope's back. "I want to." "Why?" Brielle asked. "I mean, you've already done so much. You gave me a job, a place to live, covered all the medical bills. You don't owe me anything else." Julian looked at her for a long moment, his expression serious. "What if it's not about owing? What if I'm doing this because I care about you both?" Brielle's breath caught. "Julian." "I know the timing is complicated," Julian said quickly. "You just had a baby, you're still recovering, everything is new and overwhelming. But I need you to know that being here with you and Hope, these are the happiest moments I've had in years. You make me want to be better, to do more, to matter for reasons beyond money and success. You already matter, Brielle said softly. You matter so much. Hope stirred, and Julian stood carefully, transferring her to Brielle's arms. Their hands touched during the handoff, and neither pulled away immediately. I should let you rest, Julian said, but he didn't move toward the door. Or you could stay, Brielle heard herself say. Just for a little while. It gets lonely in the middle of the night. Julian smiled and settled onto the couch beside her. They sat in comfortable silence, watching Hope sleep, their shoulders touching. Brielle felt herself drifting, exhaustion finally catching up with her. I've got her, Julian said gently, taking Hope from her arms and standing to place the baby in her bassinet. You sleep. I'll stay until you wake up, make sure she's okay. You don't have to, Brielle mumbled, already half asleep. I want to, Julian repeated. Brielle woke hours later to sunlight streaming through the windows and Julian asleep in the chair across from her, Hope sleeping peacefully in her bassinet. He'd stayed all night watching over them both. In that moment, something crystallized for Brielle. This wasn't just gratitude or hormones or loneliness. This was real. Julian cared about her, about Hope, in ways that went beyond charity or friendship. And she cared about him the same way. The question was what to do about it. Over the following weeks they fell into a routine. Julian would come for breakfast, then head to work. He'd return for dinner, help with Hope's bath, read to her even though she was too young to understand. He'd stay until Hope fell asleep, talking with Brielle about everything and nothing. One evening, 6 weeks after Hope's birth, Julian brought his mother Rosa to visit. She was a small, energetic woman with Julian's smile and eyes full of warmth. Let me see this beautiful baby, Rosa said, immediately reaching for Hope. She cooed over the infant in rapid Spanish, then turned to Brielle with tears in her eyes. She's perfect. And you're glowing. Motherhood suits you. Thank you, Brielle said, liking Julian's mother instantly. Over dinner, Rosa told stories about raising Julian, embarrassing childhood moments that made him groan and Brielle laugh. She asked about Brielle's family with genuine interest, her face sad when Brielle explained they were estranged. Then I will be your family, Rosa declared. Every baby needs grandparents and I have love to spare. Julian smiled at his mother's pronouncement, then met Brielle's eyes across the table. The look he gave her made her stomach flip. After Rosa left, Julian helped Brielle clean up while Hope dozed in her swing. Your mother is wonderful, Brielle said. She likes you, Julian said. A lot. She told me in Spanish that I'd be a fool to let you go. Brielle's hands stilled on the dish she was washing. What did you say? Julian moved closer, gently turning her to face him. I said I had no intention of letting you go. If you'll have me. Julian, Brielle breathed. I know it's complicated, Julian said. I know you're still recovering, still adjusting to motherhood. I know you might not be ready for this. But I need you to know how I feel. I'm in love with you, Brielle. I have been for months. I love your strength, your kindness, your laugh. I love watching you with Hope. I love everything about you. I love you too, Brielle whispered, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. I've been trying to convince myself it was just gratitude, but it's not. I love you. Julian cupped her face in his hands, his thumb gently stroking her cheek. Can I kiss you? Yes, Brielle said. He leaned in slowly, giving her every chance to change her mind. When their lips finally met, it was gentle and sweet and perfect. Brielle felt fireworks exploding in her chest, felt everything fall into place. When they pulled apart, both breathing hard, Julian rested his forehead against hers. I want to be with you. Really with you. And I want to be a father to Hope if you'll let me. Are you sure? Brielle asked. She's not your biological daughter. You don't have to. I know I don't have to, Julian interrupted. But I want to. I love her, Brielle. I've loved her since the moment she was born. Being her father would be an honor. Brielle kissed him again, pouring all her love and gratitude and hope into it. Yes, she said when they finally broke apart. Yes to all of it. Hope chose that moment to wake up crying and they both laughed. Julian scooped her up, bouncing her gently. Perfect timing, little one. Your mom and I just figured things out. Watching him with her daughter, Brielle felt her heart expand with so much love she thought it might burst. This was her family now. This wonderful, unexpected, perfect family. Real quick, I need to ask you something. Have you been following along this whole time? Are you as invested in Brielle and Julian's happiness as I am? If this story is touching your heart, would you do me a favor and hit that subscribe button? Drop a comment telling me what you think happens next. Do you believe in second chances? In love that comes from kindness? Your support means everything, and I promise the best parts of this story are still to come. Now, let's see what challenges await our little family. 3 months into their relationship, Brielle still sometimes woke up convinced she was dreaming. That she'd open her eyes and be back in her car, cold and alone. But then she'd feel Julian's arm around her waist, hear Hope cooing in her bassinet, and know it was all real. Julian had asked her to move into the main house with him, but Brielle insisted on keeping the guest house for now. She needed to maintain some independence, some sense that she was standing on her own feet even while accepting his love and support. "I respect that," Julian had said when she'd explained. "But just so you know, my door is always open." Literally and figuratively. They'd been sitting on his couch, Hope sleeping between them after a long day. Julian had his hand on Hope's back, keeping her steady, while his other hand held Brielle's. "I know," Brielle had said. "And that's part of why I love you. You never push. You never demand. You just give." "You give too," Julian had countered. "You've given me a reason to slow down, to appreciate the small moments. You've shown me what real strength looks like. And you've let me into your life when you had every reason to keep walls up." These conversations had become common between them. Quiet moments of honesty, sharing feelings and fears and hopes. Brielle had never been so open with anyone, but with Julian, it felt natural. Rosa had become a regular visitor, coming twice a week to spend time with Hope and Brielle. She taught Brielle family recipes, shared stories about her late husband, and filled a grandmother-shaped hole that Brielle hadn't realized existed. "Your parents are missing out," Rosa said one afternoon while showing Brielle how to make empanadas. Hope was in her bouncer nearby, watching them with serious eyes. This beautiful baby, this wonderful girl raising her. Their loss. "It still hurts sometimes," Brielle admitted. "Especially holidays. Hope will grow up not knowing them, and that makes me sad." "She'll know love," Rosa said firmly. "That's what matters. She has you and Julian and me. She has Sophia and the staff who all adore her. She has family, even if it's not the one you were born into." The words comforted Brielle more than Rosa probably knew. The idea of chosen family, of building something new rather than mourning what was lost, felt powerful. Julian proposed officially in month 4. They were in the garden, Hope in her stroller, watching the sunset. He got down on one knee with a ring that took Brielle's breath away. "I know we've already said we want to be together," Julian said. "But I want to make it official. I want the world to know that you're mine and I'm yours. I want Hope to grow up knowing that we're a family in every way that counts. Brielle Thompson, will you marry me?" "Yes," Brielle said through happy tears. 1,000 times yes. They married quietly 6 weeks later, just Rosa, Sophia, Dr. Hayes, and a few close friends. Brielle wore a simple ivory dress, bright blue shoes peeking out underneath. Hope, now 6 months old and impossibly beautiful in a green velvet dress, served as the world's youngest flower girl, carried down the aisle by Rosa. When the officiant pronounced them married, Julian kissed Brielle like she was the most precious thing in the world. And in that moment, surrounded by people who loved them, Brielle felt completely at peace. The legal adoption of Hope followed shortly after. Standing in the courthouse, Julian's hand in hers, signing papers that made him Hope's legal father, Brielle wept with joy. Hope babbled happily in her carrier, oblivious to the significance but surrounded by love. "Thank you," Brielle whispered to Julian as they left the courthouse. "For loving her like she's yours." "She is mine," Julian said simply. "Biology doesn't make a father. Love does. And I love that little girl more than I ever thought possible." Life settled into a beautiful rhythm. Brielle worked on design projects from home, building her portfolio and reputation. Julian continued running his company but made sure to be home for dinner every night, for Hope's bath time, for the bedtime stories he read with voices that made both Brielle and Hope giggle. They moved into the main house when Hope was 8 months old, Brielle finally ready to fully merge their lives. The guest house became Julian's home office, a space where he could work without disturbing Hope's naps. "I can't believe this is my life," Brielle said one evening. They were in the nursery watching Hope sleep. "A year ago I was homeless and terrified. Now I have you and Hope and this beautiful home. It doesn't seem real." "It's real," Julian assured her, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "And you deserve every bit of it. You fought for this. You never gave up even when giving up would have been easier." "I had help," Brielle said, leaning back against him. "The best kind of help." Hope stirred in her crib and they both held their breath, hoping she'd settle back down. When she did, they tiptoed out, heading to their own bedroom. Their room was bright and welcoming, decorated with photos of their growing family. Hope's first smile. The wedding. Holiday celebrations with Rosa. Each picture told a story of love overcoming hardship, of second chances and new beginnings. "I have something to tell you," Brielle said as they got ready for bed. "But I'm nervous about how you'll react." Julian immediately gave her his full attention, concern on his face. "What is it? Are you okay?" "I'm fine," Brielle assured him. "Better than fine, actually. I went to the doctor yesterday." "Without me?" Julian asked, surprised. He'd accompanied her to every appointment since they'd gotten together. "It was just a quick checkup," Brielle said. "Or so I thought. But Julian, I'm pregnant." Julian stared at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then his face broke into the biggest smile she'd ever seen. "Are you serious? We're having a baby?" "We're having a baby," Brielle confirmed, laughing and crying at the same time. "I know it's fast and maybe we should have waited, but—" Julian kissed her, cutting off her worried words. When he pulled back, his eyes were shining. "This is perfect. Hope's going to be a big sister. We're expanding our family. How could that be anything but wonderful?" "You're not upset?" Brielle asked. "Upset? I'm thrilled," Julian said. He placed his hand gently on her still flat stomach. "Another baby. Another chance to do this right from the beginning. Brielle, you've made me so happy." They held each other for a long time, talking about names and nurseries and how they'd tell Rosa. Hope woke up around midnight and they brought her into their bed, the three of them cuddling together. "Soon there will be 4 of us," Julian whispered, stroking Hope's soft curls while she nursed back to sleep. "4," Brielle echoed, marveling at how much her life had changed. "I love you so much." "I love you too," Julian said. "Both of you. All 3 of you. My whole world is right here in this bed." Brielle fell asleep that night feeling completely content, completely loved, completely at peace. She'd found her forever family in the most unexpected way, and she'd never take a single moment of it for granted. The pregnancy changed things in subtle ways. Julian became even more protective, more attentive. He made sure Brielle ate properly, rested enough, didn't overwork herself. He accompanied her to every doctor's appointment, asked a million questions, took notes like his life depended on it. "You know I've done this before, right?" Brielle teased after one particularly thorough appointment where Julian had grilled the doctor about everything from nutrition to exercise to sleep positions. "I know," Julian said, not looking embarrassed at all. "But I wasn't there for Hope. I want to be here for every moment of this one." They told Rosa at Sunday dinner, presenting her with a card that said "World's Best Grandma," with a note inside about the new baby coming. Rosa cried, hugged them both, then immediately started planning. "We need to expand the nursery," she declared. "And get another rocking chair. Oh, and you'll need twice as many bottles and—" "Mom," Julian interrupted gently. "We have time. Brielle's only 8 weeks along." "Time moves fast," Rosa said. "Especially with babies. Trust me." Hope, now 10 months old and crawling everywhere, seemed to sense the changes. She became extra clingy with Brielle, wanting to be held constantly. Julian helped manage her while Brielle dealt with morning sickness that was much worse than it had been with Hope. "I'm sorry," Brielle said one morning after spending an hour in the bathroom while Julian entertained Hope downstairs. "I hate that you have to deal with this." "Deal with what?" Julian asked, settling Hope in her high chair and bringing Brielle crackers and ginger tea. "Taking care of my wife and daughter while my second child grows? This isn't a burden, love. This is life." "You're too good to be true," Brielle said, sipping the tea carefully. "I'm really not," Julian assured her. "I'm just a man who loves his family." The design business Brielle had built continued to grow. She developed a reputation for beautiful, functional work, and clients sought her out specifically. Julian had offered to invest in expanding her business, but Brielle wanted to do it herself, to prove she could build something independently. "I'm proud of you," Julian told her one evening after she'd closed a particularly large contract with a national retailer. "You've built something incredible." "I had help," Brielle said. "You had opportunity," Julian corrected. "But you did the work. Your talent, your vision, your dedication. That's all you." These moments of affirmation meant everything to Brielle. Julian never made her feel less than, never treated her success as less important than his. He celebrated every victory, supported every challenge, and believed in her even when she doubted herself. As the pregnancy progressed, they started preparing Hope for being a big sister. They read her books about babies, let her feel Brielle's belly when the new baby kicked, involved her in setting up the expanded nursery. "Gentle," Brielle would say when Hope patted her stomach with enthusiastic toddler hands. "There's a baby in there." Hope would lean in and babble at Brielle's belly, carrying on whole conversations with her future sibling. It melted both Brielle's and Julian's hearts. At 18 weeks they found out they were having a boy. Julian cried during the ultrasound, watching his son move and kick on the screen. Brielle held his hand, understanding the depth of his emotion. This was his biological child, the first time he'd experienced pregnancy from the beginning. "We need a name," Brielle said that evening. They were in the nursery watching Hope play with her toys while they looked at paint samples for the new baby's side of the room. "I'd like to name him after my father," Julian said quietly. "Roberto. But only if you agree. This is your baby too." "Our baby," Brielle corrected. "And I love that name. Roberto Morales. It's perfect." They painted one wall of the nursery a soft green, added a second crib, hung pictures of stars and moons to match Hope's side. The room represented their blended family. Hope adopted but utterly loved, Roberto biological but no more precious. Both children equally theirs. Rosa came over frequently, helping prepare, sharing wisdom from her years of motherhood. She and Brielle had developed a deep bond, the kind of mother-daughter relationship Brielle had always wanted but never had with her own mother. "Have you thought about reaching out to your family?" Rosa asked one day while they folded tiny baby clothes. "About telling them about the new baby?" "I think about it sometimes," Brielle admitted. "But they made their choice. They wanted me to give Hope up, to pretend she never existed. I can't forgive that." "I understand," Rosa said. "Family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's the people who choose to love you." "Like you," Brielle said, hugging her mother-in-law. "You chose to love me and Hope when you barely knew us." "You made it easy," Rosa said. "You make my son happy. You brought joy back into his life. How could I not love you?" At 24 weeks, complications developed. Brielle's blood pressure spiked again, just like it had with Hope. Dr. Hayes put her on bed rest, and Julian immediately rearranged his entire schedule to work from home. "You have a company to run," Brielle protested from her bed. "And I'm running it from here," Julian said, setting up his laptop at the desk in their bedroom. "My family comes first. Always." He handled everything: Hope's care, the household meals, his work, and Brielle's needs. He did it without complaint, without making Brielle feel guilty, with nothing but love and determination. "I don't deserve you," Brielle said one particularly hard day when the bed rest was making her stir-crazy and emotional. Julian looked up from his laptop, came to the bed, and took her hands. "You deserve everything good in this world. You're strong and brave and kind. You've overcome more than most people face in a lifetime. You're raising an amazing daughter, building a successful business, and growing our son. You deserve nothing but happiness." "I am happy," Brielle said. "Sometimes I'm so happy it scares me. Like maybe I don't get to keep this." "You keep it," Julian said firmly. "This is your life now. Our life. And nothing is taking it away from us." Hope toddled over then, wanting up on the bed. Julian lifted her carefully, settling her next to Brielle. She immediately put her little hand on Brielle's belly, right where Roberto was kicking. "Baby," Hope said clearly, one of her first real words. "That's right," Brielle said, tears in her eyes. "Your baby brother." Julian wrapped his arms around both of them, and they stayed like that for a long time. Three people who'd found each other against all odds, about to become four. A family built on kindness and hope and love that refused to give up. "I love you," Brielle whispered to Julian. "I love you more," he whispered back. "Impossible," Brielle said, smiling through her tears. But as she looked at her husband and daughter, felt her son kicking inside her, Brielle knew that impossible things happened every day. She was living proof of that. And she'd spend the rest of her life grateful for every single impossibly wonderful moment. Roberto arrived 2 weeks early but healthy, a beautiful baby boy with his father's eyes and a full head of dark hair. The birth was easier than Hope's had been, and Julian was there through every moment, coaching Brielle's breathing and crying happy tears when his son entered the world. Hope met her baby brother the next day, climbing onto the hospital bed with Rosa's help. She looked at Roberto with serious concentration, then gently patted his head. "Gentle, just like we practiced," Brielle said. "Baby," Hope declared, then kissed his forehead. Everyone in the room melted. They brought Roberto home to a house full of love and celebration. Brielle marveled at how different this experience was from Hope's birth. Then she'd been alone and terrified. Now she had a husband who split night feedings with her, a mother-in-law who came over with meals and help, a home filled with everything they needed. "I keep waiting for something to go wrong," Brielle admitted to Julian one night as they both rocked babies back to sleep. Hope had been waking up when Roberto cried, needing reassurance that she was still loved. "Nothing's going to go wrong," Julian said. "We're careful, we're prepared, we have help. Everything is going to be fine." It was the next day when the knock came. Brielle was home alone with both babies, Julian having gone into the office for an unavoidable meeting. Sophia was there helping with laundry when the doorbell rang. "I'll get it," Sophia called. Brielle was nursing Roberto in the living room, Hope playing nearby with her blocks. She heard voices at the door, Sophia's polite tone followed by a male voice that made Brielle's blood run cold. She knew that voice. "Tyler." "I'm sorry," Sophia was saying, "but Mrs. Morales isn't receiving visitors right now." "Mrs. Morales?" Tyler's voice dripped with mockery. "Is that what she's calling herself now? I need to see Brielle. It's about my daughter." Brielle felt panic rising in her chest. She quickly finished feeding Roberto, burped him, and placed him in his bassinet. Then she scooped up Hope and went to the door. Tyler stood there, looking exactly as she remembered. Same arrogant smile, same expensive clothes, same air of entitlement. But there was something different in his eyes now. Something calculating. "Brielle," he said, his voice falsely warm. "You look good. I heard you got married. What do you want, Tyler?" Brielle asked, keeping Hope close. Her daughter didn't recognize him, which was both heartbreaking and good. "Can I come in?" Tyler asked. "We need to talk." Every instinct told Brielle to slam the door in his face. But Sophia was watching, concerned, and Brielle didn't want to cause a scene. "Fine. But make it quick." She led him to the living room, keeping Hope on her hip. Sophia stayed close, protective. Tyler looked around the mansion with obvious appreciation. "You've done well for yourself. Billionaire husband, all this." He gestured around. "Must be nice. What do you want?" Brielle repeated. Tyler's expression hardened. "I want to be part of my daughter's life. I've been doing some thinking and I realize I made a mistake walking away. She's my blood and I have rights." "You gave up those rights when you abandoned us," Brielle said coldly. "You told me to get an abortion or you were done. You haven't contacted me once in over a year. You don't get to waltz back in now." "I can file for custody," Tyler threatened. "I'm her biological father. A judge will give me visitation at minimum." Brielle felt sick. She knew he was right. Biology mattered in court, regardless of how terrible a person had been. "Why are you really here, Tyler? You never wanted to be a father." Tyler's mask slipped for a moment, showing his true colors. "Let's be honest. You married a billionaire. My daughter is living in this mansion, probably set to inherit a fortune someday. I want what's mine." "She's not yours," Brielle said fiercely. "She's Julian's daughter. He adopted her legally. He's the only father she's ever known or ever will know." "We'll see what a court says about that," Tyler said. "I've already talked to a lawyer. I can drag this out for years, make it expensive and messy. Or," he paused significantly, "we can come to an arrangement." There it was. The real reason he'd come. "How much?" Brielle asked flatly. Tyler named a figure that made Sophia gasp. It was a huge amount of money, but Brielle knew Julian could afford it. The question was whether they should pay it. "I need to talk to my husband," Brielle said. "You have 48 hours, Tyler said, standing. "After that I file the paperwork." "And Brielle?" "I will win. I always do." He left, and Brielle immediately collapsed onto the couch, still holding Hope. Her daughter looked up at her with concerned eyes, patting Brielle's face. "Mama sad?" Hope asked. "Mama's okay," Brielle lied. "Mama's going to make everything okay." Sophia called Julian, who came home immediately. Brielle explained everything while he listened with a face like stone. When she finished, he pulled out his phone and made a call. "I need to speak with my lawyer," he said. "Now. It's urgent." The next hours were a whirlwind of legal consultations. Julian's lawyer explained that Tyler did have standing to seek custody or visitation, that the adoption might not hold up if Tyler challenged it, that this could indeed become a long, expensive legal battle. "Or we could pay him," the lawyer said. "Sign a document where he relinquishes all parental rights in exchange for a settlement. It's not ideal, but it's clean." "No," Brielle said firmly. Everyone looked at her in surprise. "We're not paying him. He abandoned his daughter. He doesn't get to profit from that." "Brielle," Julian started gently. "No," Brielle repeated. I won't do it. If he wants to fight, we'll fight. We'll show the court that he walked away, that he told me to abort her, that he's only back now because he wants money. Hope deserves better than having a father who sees her as a meal ticket. Julian looked at his lawyer. Can we win? Maybe, the lawyer said honestly. It depends on the judge, on what evidence we can present. But yes, we have a chance. Then we fight, Julian said, taking Brielle's hand. We fight for our daughter. Over the next week they built their case. Brielle had saved every text message from Tyler, every email. They documented his absence, his demands for abortion, his complete lack of interest or support. Friends came forward with statements. Brielle's former landlord confirmed Tyler had never helped with rent, never checked on her welfare. The preliminary hearing was tense. Tyler showed up with his lawyer, all fake smiles and concern. The judge listened to both sides, reviewed the evidence, and made a temporary ruling. Mr. Williams has not demonstrated sufficient interest in the child's welfare to warrant disrupting her current stable home, the judge said. However, he does have biological rights that merit consideration. I'm ordering a full custody evaluation before making any permanent decisions. It wasn't a victory, but it wasn't a loss either. Tyler looked furious as they left the courthouse. This isn't over, he hissed at Brielle. No, Brielle agreed. But you're going to lose. Because Hope isn't a prize to be won. She's a child who deserves parents who actually love her. And that's me and Julian, not you. The custody evaluation took months. A social worker came to the house, interviewed them, observed them with Hope and Roberto. She spoke with Rosa, with Dr. Hayes, with Sophia. She compiled reports and made recommendations. Through it all, Julian never wavered. He stood by Brielle, attended every hearing, fought for their daughter with everything he had. Hope continued to grow and thrive, calling Julian Dada, and showing no recognition of Tyler at all. Finally, the day of the final hearing arrived. Brielle was terrified, clutching Julian's hand as they waited for the judge's decision. Tyler sat across the courtroom with his lawyer, confident and smug. The judge reviewed the custody evaluation report, then looked up at them all. I've reviewed all the evidence, all the testimony, all the reports, she said. And I've made my decision. Brielle held her breath. It's clear that Mr. Williams abandoned his daughter before she was even born. He provided no support, financial or emotional, during the pregnancy or after the birth. He only appeared when he learned of the mother's marriage to a wealthy man. This court does not reward such behavior. Tyler's lawyer started to object, but the judge held up her hand. Furthermore, the child has been legally adopted by Mr. Morales, who has been her primary father figure since birth. The adoption is valid and binding. Mr. Williams relinquished his parental rights through his actions, and this court sees no reason to reinstate them. Your Honor, Tyler's lawyer tried again. My decision is final, the judge said firmly. The adoption stands. Mr. Williams has no parental rights and no claim to custody or visitation. This case is dismissed. Brielle burst into tears and Julian pulled her into his arms. They'd won. Hope was safe. Their family was intact. Tyler stormed out of the courtroom, his lawyer following. He shot Brielle one last venomous look, but she didn't care. He had no power over them anymore. It's over, Julian whispered into her hair. He can't hurt us anymore. We won, Brielle said, still crying. We actually won. They picked up Hope from Rosa's house, holding her extra close. She had no idea what had just happened, but she seemed to sense their relief, giggling and kissing both their faces. Mama happy? She asked. Mama's very happy, Brielle confirmed. We all are. That night, after both children were asleep, Brielle and Julian sat on their bedroom balcony, looking out over the gardens. Thank you for fighting for her, Brielle said. She's my daughter, Julian said simply. There was never any question that I'd fight. I'd fight the whole world for you and our children. I love you so much, Brielle said. I love you too, Julian replied. All of you. My whole perfect family. Brielle leaned against him, feeling completely at peace for the first time in months. The battle was over. Tyler was gone. Their family was safe and legal and whole. And nothing would ever threaten that again. 6 months after the custody battle ended, life had settled into a beautiful routine. Hope was 2 years old, running and talking and getting into everything with the fearless joy of a toddler. Roberto was 6 months old, just starting to sit up on his own, always smiling and happy. Brielle's design business continued to flourish. She'd hired an assistant and was considering opening a small studio downtown. Julian supported the idea completely, even offering to help find the perfect location. You don't have to help with everything, Brielle told him one morning over breakfast. I know, Julian said, stealing a piece of her toast while simultaneously preventing Hope from feeding Roberto her scrambled eggs. But I like to. Plus, I'm very good at real estate. You're very good at everything, Brielle said, rolling her eyes fondly. Not everything, Julian corrected. I'm terrible at keeping our daughter from climbing on furniture. As if to prove his point, Hope had somehow managed to climb onto her chair and was attempting to reach the light fixture. Hope Morales, get down, Brielle said sternly. Hope giggled and climbed higher. Your daughter, Julian said to Brielle. Our daughter, Brielle corrected, getting up to retrieve the adventurous toddler. And she gets her stubbornness from you. Me? Julian asked innocently. I'm very agreeable. You once argued with a client for 3 hours over a font choice, Brielle reminded him. It was the wrong font, Julian said. Some hills are worth dying on. These easy, playful moments filled their days. The fear and uncertainty of the past year had faded, replaced with security and joy. Brielle sometimes still couldn't believe this was her life, but she'd learned to accept the happiness rather than question it. Rosa came over that afternoon, ostensibly to watch the children but really to plan a surprise party for Julian's 33rd birthday the following week. He doesn't want a big fuss, Brielle said as they looked through Pinterest boards of party ideas. Too bad, Rosa said cheerfully. He deserves to be celebrated. He's a wonderful father and husband, and we're going to throw him a party whether he likes it or not. You're kind of scary sometimes, Brielle said admiringly. I learned from raising a stubborn son, Rosa replied. You have to be scary to keep them in line. They settled on a small gathering at the house, just family and close friends. Sophia insisted on handling the catering, and Brielle was designing the invitations herself. Can you make them blue? Rosa asked. It's his favorite color. I know, Brielle said softly. He wears that blue shirt I got him at least once a week. He loves you very much, Rosa said, looking at Brielle with warm eyes. I've never seen him this happy. Not even before Isabella. I love him too, Brielle said. More than I ever thought possible. The party was a success. Julian was genuinely surprised, touched by the effort everyone had made. He gave a small speech thanking everyone for coming, for being part of their lives, for making his family feel loved and supported. A year ago, Julian said, his arm around Brielle with Hope on his hip and Roberto in Rosa's arms, I thought I had everything. But I was wrong. I had success but not happiness. I had wealth but not love. And then this incredible woman knocked on my door during a storm and everything changed. Brielle felt tears prick her eyes as he continued. Brielle showed me what real strength looks like. What real love is. She gave me a daughter and a son, a family I'd been missing without even knowing it. She made me want to be better, to do more, to matter for reasons beyond money and business. So thank you, my love, for choosing me. For letting me be part of your life. For making me the happiest man alive. Everyone applauded, and Brielle kissed him, not caring that people were watching. You saved me, she whispered against his lips. We saved each other, Julian whispered back. Later that evening, after the guests had left and the children were asleep, Julian led Brielle out to the garden. The spot where she'd first collapsed at his gate had been transformed into a beautiful sitting area with a fountain and flowers. I've been thinking, Julian said, sitting on the bench and pulling Brielle down beside him. About this spot. About that night. It feels like a lifetime ago, Brielle said. It does, Julian agreed. But I never want to forget it. Because that was the night everything began. The night you had the courage to ask for help, and I had the privilege of giving it. He stood and got down on one knee again just as he had when he proposed. Brielle laughed through sudden tears. What are you doing? We're already married. I know, Julian said, pulling out a small box. But I never gave you a proper wedding. We did the quick courthouse thing because of the adoption, but you deserve more. You deserve the fairy tale. He opened the box to reveal a second ring, a beautiful band to complement her engagement ring. Brielle Morales, love of my life, mother of my children, would you renew our vows with me? Let me give you the wedding you deserve. Yes, Brielle said, crying openly now. Of course yes. They planned the ceremony for 3 months later, when Roberto would be old enough to attend without needing constant feeding. It was small but beautiful, held in the garden where they'd gotten engaged, where Brielle had first knocked on Julian's door. Rosa walked Brielle down the makeshift aisle, having stepped into the mother role Brielle's own mother had abandoned. Hope and Roberto were there, dressed in matching outfits, Hope clutching a basket of flower petals that she scattered with enthusiastic inaccuracy. Julian wore a burgundy suit, and Brielle wore a flowing ivory dress with bright blue flowers embroidered along the hem, representing hope and new beginnings. They'd written their own vows, promising to love and support each other, to be partners and parents, to face whatever life brought with courage and kindness. "You are my unexpected blessing," Julian said, his voice thick with emotion. "You and our children are my everything. I promise to love you fiercely, support you completely, and spend every day of my life making sure you know how precious you are. You are my salvation," Brielle said, tears streaming down her face. "You gave me everything when I had nothing. But more than that, you gave me hope. Hope that good people exist. Hope that love can heal. Hope that happy endings are real. I promise to love you with everything I am, to be your partner in all things, and to never forget how blessed I am to have you." They kissed as husband and wife for the second time, but it felt like the first. Like a new beginning even though they'd already been married for months. The reception was joyful and loud, filled with music and dancing and laughter. Rosa gave a speech about how proud her husband would have been of the man Julian had become. Sophia talked about watching their love story unfold and knowing it was something special. Friends shared funny stories and heartfelt wishes. As the sun set and fairy lights twinkled in the garden, Brielle and Julian danced with their children between them. Hope giggled as they spun her around, and Roberto watched everything with wide, fascinated eyes. "Happy?" Julian asked. "Happier than I ever imagined possible," Brielle said. "Good," Julian said, kissing her forehead. "Because this is just the beginning. We have a whole lifetime ahead of us." "A lifetime," Brielle repeated, liking the sound of it. That night, after the guests had gone and the children were finally asleep, Brielle stood in the nursery watching Hope and Roberto. They looked so peaceful, so loved, so safe. Julian came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "What are you thinking about?" "About how different things could have been," Brielle said. "If you hadn't answered your gate that night. If you'd turned me away. If you'd been cruel instead of kind." "But I wasn't," Julian said. "And you weren't. We chose kindness and love and hope, and look what we built." Brielle turned in his arms, looking up at the man who had saved her in every way a person could be saved. "Thank you," she whispered. "For everything. For being exactly who you are." "Thank you," Julian whispered back, "for knocking on my door. For giving me the chance to be part of something this beautiful." They stood there for a long time, holding each other and watching their children sleep. Two people who had been broken in different ways, who had found each other when they needed it most, who had built something beautiful from desperate circumstances. Brielle thought about that terrified, pregnant woman who had collapsed at Julian's gate. She wanted to tell her past self that everything would be okay. Better than okay. That love and kindness would win. That happy endings were real. But she didn't need to, because she was living proof. "Come on," Julian said softly, taking her hand. "Let's go to bed. Tomorrow starts a whole new day of our happily ever after." "Happily ever after," Brielle repeated, smiling. "I like the sound of that." And as they walked hand in hand to their bedroom, leaving the nursery door open so they could hear if the children needed them, Brielle knew that this was what happiness felt like. Not perfect, not without challenges, but full of love and hope and the certainty that they'd face whatever came together. She'd knocked on a billionaire's door begging for help, and she'd found everything she'd ever needed. Not just help. Not just safety. But home.